entering boat registrations and issuing temporary registrations. To start the boat registration process for a customer, navigate to the Customer Profile/Customer Information page from the Customer Search tile. Once you have located the customer profile, click Register Boat button from their Customer Profile page. From the Registration Lookup page, enter the whole identification number for the boat being registered. If one is not available, you may select the No Hull Identification Number checkbox. If the boat has been previously registered in Kansas, enter the KA registration number. Click the Continue button to proceed to the co-applicant information step. If the registration has no co-applicants to add, simply click Save and Continue. If the registration includes co-owners, click Add Co-applicant. If the co-applicant has a valid customer account, you can use the lookup feature to locate the co-applicant using their customer ID and date of birth. If the co-applicant's customer ID is not available, simply record their first name and last name within the applicable fields on the page. You may optionally provide their date of birth if it is available. When all information about the co-owner is entered, click Save Co-applicant. To add additional co-applicants, click the Add Co-applicant button again and repeat the same process. When you have finished adding co-applicants, click Save and Continue. If you are processing a transfer registration for a boat previously registered in Kansas, certain information on the boat information step as shown will be automatically populated using the previous registrant's information. Once all information is provided, click Save and Continue to proceed to the next step to enter seller and purchase information. On the Seller Information page, choose from one of the following options from the Purchased from drop-down: Home Built, Individual, or Business. Required fields on the page will vary based on the value selected. If required, enter the seller's name. Next, enter the date purchased. If the boat was purchased out of state, enter the state it was purchased from and the out-of-state registration number. Once all information is entered, click Save and Continue. Next, enter any motor information from the registration. Enter the motor year, serial number, and horsepower. If applicable, enter any secondary serial numbers available. Once all information is entered, click Save and Continue. On the Review page, review the registration information entered for accuracy. If you need to make adjustments to the information entered, click the Go Back, Make Corrections button. Once you have confirmed the information, click Submit Application. You will be redirected to the customer cart. From the cart, you can click Start New Registration to process a second registration or click Checkout Now to proceed to checkout. From the Checkout page, Select the payment method for the transaction and enter the payment amount associated with the transaction. If the customer is using multiple payment methods for the transaction, enter the amount received for the first payment method at this step. Once you process the initial payment, you will have the opportunity to apply a payment for the remaining balance. The page will also display a checkbox labeled "Automatically approve this registration," which is selected by default and appears for eligible registrations. If the HIN status for the registration is set to a questionable status based on the information, only a temporary registration can be issued and this option will not appear on the page. By deselecting this option, the registration will remain in a temporary status and should only be unchecked if additional review is required prior to approving the registration. Click Process Order to complete the transaction. Once the transaction has been processed, users will be taken to the transaction confirmation screen. Select Print Registration Documents button to access a PDF of the registration documents to print for permanent registrations. Click the Print Registration Details to access a PDF of the temporary registration document for pending registrations. You can also choose one of the following options from the confirmation page. Select Back to Registration to view the boat registration, or select Void Transaction to cancel the transaction and all registrations issued within the transaction. Important business rules for boat registration processing. Registrations entered with a whole ID number status of questionable will continue to need to be reviewed and approved by KDWP's Pratt office team prior to a permanent registration being issued. When processing a registration with a questionable HIN status, you will continue to be able to issue a temporary registration to the customer. Please note that if a whole identification number is not provided within the registration lookup step of the process, the whole status will also be set to questionable. Users will be restricted from processing registrations for a boat if an in-progress registration is associated with another customer for that boat. Any in-progress registrations must be first canceled to initiate a registration for another customer to ensure that duplicate registrations cannot be issued to different customers for the same boat.